Hello, I'm Peter Mansbridge, one-on-one with Internet expert, author, and analyst Jim Carroll. When you first signed on to the Internet, how long ago was that?
Probably about 20 years ago. It wasn't known as the Internet back then. It was just, a modem and a computer and something known as bulletin boards. It was like the really early primitive days. Very, very different back then compared to where we are today.
But did you even have a sense back then that you were looking at something that was going to change the way we live?
Yeah, I did. I'm a chartered accountant by background, and back then I was with a large public accounting firm in 1981, 1982, and I started fooling around with this stuff. And I remember a lot of the people I worked with, as I got deeper and deeper into this, saying, "You're crazy. Why are you getting involved with this technology? Why are you getting involved with electronic mail and all of this stuff when you're throwing away a perfectly good career?" And I was convinced back then, from the very moment I got online, looking around, just saying, "Wow, there's something big going on here, and this is fascinating. A heck of a lot more fun than accounting. I want to be part of this."
Well, 20 years ago, as you say, a lot of things have changed since then. Let's talk about penetration for a moment. The most recent number I've heard is 55% of Canadians have access to the net either through their home or through the office.
That's right.
Now, what does that number mean in terms of people? Because I assume it's skewed to younger versus older.
At least, yeah, definitely towards the younger generation. I mean, the demographics, I think, are at least half of the people 25 to 44 are online. That's usually occurring through work. I mean, if you go through corporate Canada, huge numbers of people are accessing the internet through their desks at work. But you can take apart the numbers further. There's some fascinating stuff. Tweens, kids who are aged 9 to 14, 88% of those households have access to the internet. What's going on there is this is in some ways a youth-driven thing. The kids are coming home and saying to mom and dad, "Look, we don't have an internet connection. We have to get online because my friends are. We want to be a part of this." The demographics are all over the place. Clearly, older folks are not using this for a variety of reasons. But every time you say that, every time I say that somewhere, I get a whole bunch of email from a whole bunch of senior citizens saying, "Hey, wait, there's large numbers of us online." There are numbers of those folks using it as well.
Well, what do you say to the seniors who aren't online? I mean, I think of my parents and some of their friends who are either for the economics, they think it's too expensive, or because they're scared of it. They just think it's too complicated for them, and they're going by perhaps the early stories of even a couple of years ago. Is it cheaper and simpler for people to get online now?
Definitely, compared to 4 or 5 years ago. I mean, when we wrote our first book, it was horrendous trying to explain how to get online. Today, it can be very, very straightforward. The biggest barrier is psychological. I mean, the older generations, baby boomers and beyond, I mean, we grew up with technology at its ugliest time. We met the punch card, that said, "Do not fold me, spindle me, or mutilate me." I mean, it wasn't a good relationship from that point on. And there is a lot of concern. There is a lot of terror with the keyboard. I mean, we haven't grown up with the computer from birth like the kids of today, so we've got a lot to get over. What I notice happening is a lot of grandparents are being dragged on by their grandkids. The grandkids are coming to visit and saying, "Hey, we'd like to communicate with you." All they need is some type of spark, whether it's communicating with their grandchildren, whether it's researching healthcare issues. I mean, as we get older, as we age, we're dealing with a lot more in terms of serious concerns. There's a lot of extremely useful healthcare information online. I'm finding with senior citizens that what is happening is some people, they're retiring, they suddenly have the money, the time, the inclination. All they need is that little spark to capture their imagination, get them online, and they can easily get over the hurdle. I've seen it happen with hundreds of people across the country.
When you describe how this has changed our life, what's the easiest way of describing it?
I think it's making the world a very different place for us. I think the global aspect of the internet, the way we're communicating with people, what we're learning, the experiences we're able to have, the friends we're able to meet. I think it's the communication aspect. I mean, I've met people around the world, and I've traveled the world, and I've met up with them finally in the real world, as opposed to just meeting them through a computer. I think I've learned a lot about the world. I think it's changed for me and many other people what we think we can do with our lives. I think the net is a very empowering technology. I think it can do a lot for us. Yes, it causes a lot of problems and poses a bunch of challenges, but to me it's all about empowerment. It's a very, very useful tool.
I want to get to some of those problems and challenges a little later, but launch me into the next phase, because you do get the sense with the net that as radically as things have changed in the past few years, we're really just seeing the tip of the iceberg of how our lives are going to change by access to the net. What do you play futurist for me for a moment. What's going to happen in the next few years?
The thing that is going on is I think there's two key driving trends. Number one, more and more people are getting online, so we're undergoing sort of a behavioral change. We're making this a part of our lives. And the second thing, obviously, is that there's huge sums of money pouring into anything internet related. It is the next big wave. Those sums of money are driving forward the pace of innovation at remarkable rates. Probably one of the biggest things that is going to happen is the net is going to become faster, much faster. If you take companies like Nortel, Lucent Technologies, all of these companies that are working with optical fiber, it's said now that in their research labs they can take one tiny optical fiber strand, it's smaller than a human hair, they can take one of those now and they can send every single telephone call being made in North America at this moment in time. 15 million phone calls can be sent all at once. In Bell Labs, the research they're working on would let that one little fiber let 360,000 people download the entire Phantom Menace Star Wars movie all at once. That technology is in the labs, and they're now beginning to roll it out and put it into the backbone of our telecommunications systems and making it part of the internet. A whole bunch of implications from that. Today, the net is very text and picture oriented. We see some words, we see some pictures. Tomorrow, it is going to be this huge 500 million channel universe. We're going to be making telephone calls through it. We will be watching video through it. We will be listening to radio stations through it. We will be accessing new types of information online. We'll be making all of the telephone calls anywhere in the world for absolutely no cost.
But you're suggesting then that we're going to be making a lot of the things that are in our home now obsolete. I mean, is there going to be a need for a telephone, a television, a radio, a CD player, all these other things, if everything can be done through this one other area, the computer?
They're all going to change. They're going to change in a very dramatic fashion. I mean, at my home, I've got 14 computers. I've got a high-speed connection to the internet, so I'm sort of living on the edge with this stuff. I have recently taken all 700 CDs that I own, the music CDs that I own, and I've converted them over to a computer format, so they're sitting on one of the machines in my house. I've got 10,000 songs instantly accessible. To me, the CD itself is obsolete. To me, music is about a bigger hard drive. So it's going to change the way we access entertainment. It's going to change the way we access information. But a lot of the other devices in our home are simply going to change in terms of what they do, the way we will use them. You take the microwave, for example. Today it's there. We know it's got a couple of computer chips in it. Well, tomorrow, the microwave that ships tomorrow, it's going to ship with some computer chips in it that are going to be plugged into the internet. That's going to change what we do with that device, the way we use that device. It sort of leads us off into the world of the Jetsons.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, you hear talk about the e-fridge that'll keep track of what you have and order online what you're running low of, that you won't be involved at all.
That's right.
Is this real? Is this going to happen?
I get a little skeptical when it gets a little bit, that futuristic. I think we're still, in our lives, we're going to want to be hands-on with a lot of stuff. We're still going to want to manage what is in our fridge. But I think we'll see more subtle changes. If we go back to the microwave, the story we described in one of our books is that the internet and the microwave of the future is going to solve the challenge of microwave popcorn. It's Friday night at my place. I've got two young kids, and we make popcorn. And you read a bag of microwave popcorn, it says cook between 2 to 3 minutes. They're not very precise. They can't be, because every microwave has a different power setting. Well, what is going to happen in the future is the microwave I'll buy 5 years out is going to come with an internet chip built in. It's going to be plugged into my household electrical current, which will be part of the internet. I'll put the popcorn in the microwave. A barcode reader is going to look at it, and it's going to say it's Orville Redenbacher popcorn. This is a Sharp 7000 microwave you have. It's going to send a query out through the internet to a company, which is going to come back and say, cook that for 2 minutes and 37 seconds. That's the type of thing that we will see develop. And today it sounds very silly. It's the Jetsons, but this is where the folks in Silicon Valley are working. This is what the venture capital is flowing into, is enabling a lot of the technology devices throughout our lives, whether they're our cars, our fridges, our microwaves, our phones, who knows what, so that they can talk through the internet.
I got to take a break, but I want to pick up on one thing you said a moment ago about the speed, the access on the net, because there's this concern about things take too long to come up on your screen. And there's two different versions, at least two different versions of high-speed access now: phone line or cable, high-speed phone line or cable. What's your sense here? I mean, I picked 8-track over cassette. I picked beta over VHS. What am I supposed to do here? Which is the one that's going to last, or are they both going to last?
They're both going to last, and there's going to be other alternatives. Satellite-based access to the internet is going to be a very big reality soon. These little pizza-sized dishes that we're putting in place for television channels right now will soon have capability for internet. One of the folks behind one of the biggest satellite internet ventures is Bill Gates. He believes that's a pathway to the future. Wireless-based internet access is probably one of the hottest areas of the internet industry today, where they're sitting back and saying, why do we need wires at all to connect to this thing? Let's just do it via radio. The third is electrical companies are looking at the internet and saying, hey, we've got wires into the home. Why don't we provide access that way? So I think a few years out, we're going to have 5 different methods to get online. We'll have the cable via the cable companies. We'll have a phone line. We'll have satellite. We'll have wireless, and we'll have electrical. And we might even have a few more surprises in store.
And we may know how to cook our popcorn.
That's right.
Okay, we're going to take a break. When we come back, I want to talk about security on the net. It's a concern for a lot of people, and recently there's been indications that you should be concerned about what you put about your own personal information on the net. Coming back one-on-one with Jim Carroll here on CBC News. Back one-on-one with internet expert Jim Carroll. E-commerce is clearly exploding. The ability to purchase things on the net, whether it's through auction sites or whether it's going to regular merchandisers. The concern has always been putting your credit card number there on the net. We've seen in recent days a sense of fraud on credit card numbers on the net, somebody getting hold of hundreds of thousands of them and putting them out there for anyone to see. What's your read on this?
There's a whole bunch of things that are happening. Number one, I think a lot of people are overly terrified of the internet. It's very bizarre. We go into a restaurant and we go up to a waiter or a waitress. We give them our credit card number. They go into the back of the room. They could be writing it down and misusing it. We don't worry about that, but we get on the internet and we're immediately convinced that there's some evil person there just waiting to steal our credit card number. If I wanted to be fraudulent, I'd probably get a job as a waiter in a restaurant. It would be a heck of a lot easier to do it. There are challenges with security on the net, but maybe we're a little bit overly concerned. I think it's sort of like banking machines 20 years ago. When those first came out, everybody wondered, how do I know I'm going to get my cash? It's going to give me the right amount of cash. We got over it. We got over those concerns, and I think over time, we will get over the concerns with the internet. Over the transaction, when you buy something through a store online, there's more security in place there, far more security than exists when you go into a retail store. When you go into a retail store and they swipe your credit card through the little terminal and you hear the little squeaking as it dials up and so on, and that information is transmitted in the clear to the financial institution. So any kid can go into a Radio Shack and buy a device for $5 to tap the line. To tap the internet line, you need a spare supercomputer or two. Not many people have that at their disposal. So there's that aspect. You're safer with the transaction. Where things are going wrong is in this situation, somebody was able to break into the computer at an online store and steal several 100,000 credit card numbers. That is a problem that exists on the net. And most of those circumstances come about because of the negligence of those who built the store. It's like they've built the store and they've left the front door open and the cash register's open and anybody can walk in and grab the important stuff. Companies need to do a better job in securing their site. That's where we're falling down on the internet. And they have to do that to get over the consumer confidence issue because it's a huge challenge. Everybody is concerned about it.
One of the things the internet has done, whether it's through commerce or other areas, is pretty well wiped out borders. And it's raised the question of regulation. And it's raised the question of whether or not governments really are understanding what's happening on the web, how much business is taking place there, how much movement of materials which in any other media format are considered illegal, whether it's pornographic material or what have you. Are governments ready? Does there need to be some form of international regulation of the net?
I don't know. Regulation will never work. I don't think international regulation is the right word. They'll never be able to regulate this thing, control what people say and do, control the information that is flowed through. I think some form of international policing will be necessary. I mean, yes, we know that there is pornography out there. There is hate literature. There is child porn. There's a lot of wrong things being done online. Investment frauds, fraudulent medical information. You can't stop people from doing that. You'll never be able to shut it down. But I think there is a need for police forces, for law enforcement officials, for legal officials to be able to find and prosecute those who are breaking the laws. I mean, a law is a law. A country determines this is the law and thou shalt not break it. If we can determine you're breaking it, we'll prosecute you. So let's beef up the capability for the police forces to do that at the same time that we don't stifle our basic democratic freedoms. That's what happens when you get into the concept of regulation. Let's restrict people from talking about certain things online, well, that begins to cross into a gray area where you're restricting the freedom to do certain things of people who have the right to do that. So I think it's more a question of policing. Let's beef up the police budgets.
But how do you police something that has no borders? Because different countries look at different policing issues in a different way.
And that's the huge challenge of the internet. I mean, Islamic law is very different from the laws of other countries. The laws in France are very different from the laws in Canada. It's a tremendous challenge. And I think, there's been a sea change in attitude. 4 or 5 years ago, you would get politicians, stand up and say with a loud voice, we have to do something to regulate the internet. You don't hear a lot of that anymore. I think they're slowly coming to realize that it is going to require an international approach. It is going to require an international effort. And I think we're hearing less of the word regulation, and I think we're hearing more of the word investigation and of policing.
What about governments looking at the degree of commerce that's taking place on the net? Because it does seem to me that there are opportunities here to get around paying any number of different taxes, customs duties, on the movement of goods. Buying stuff south of the border, which you could actually download into your computer. You never have to leave your house or bring anything in. You don't pay any PST or GST, and you're in a...
Big problems.
Well, they are big problems. Do they recognize this?
They're coming to. I mean, I think it was Dubai announced recently that they're setting up the first duty-free internet zone. And theoretically, I could set up my store there and sell my books from Dubai and have the money placed into a bank account in Dubai and never have it touch Canada. The tremendous problems from the taxation. There's those who say that it's going to present fundamental challenges to the very basics of our taxation system, the foundation of how we collect money in government. I don't think anybody really knows how this is going to play out. And the only thing that does work is there are no easy solutions. And it does require international effort, not the efforts of a single province, not the efforts of a single country. We're seeing in the States, a lot of states are sitting back and saying, we're going to pass a law that's going to place taxation on internet transactions that occur. Well, anybody who's going to create something on the internet is not going to do it in that state. The internet has the power to determine where they're going to do business. So it does make it tremendously challenging.
What about business? Are they ready? You signaled in a recent article in the Globe and Mail after the big AOL Time Warner multi-$100 billion merger that this was a wake-up call to business, especially in this country. Well, something is going on here that they don't recognize.
Canadian businesses scare me. I mean, I'm still spending a lot of time with executives at companies trying to help them understand strategically, how do we understand this thing? Helping them understand that, look, this is about more than selling books through the internet. This is something that is changing the competition you're faced with in your industry. It's changing your customer. It's providing a very significant change to the very business model by which you operate. There's a lot of folks who don't get how big a business shift this represents. And for us to be in that state in Canada, when a lot of executives south of the border are making the progression a lot faster, it does worry me. We see a far more entrepreneurial environment down there, a lot more willingness to take risks with the internet, and that feeds into the whole brain drain thing. That it is very true. I see
What's
people.
What's the resistance here? Is it an age thing, or is it?
It's an age thing, but I think it's also maybe our culture. I mean, we've grown up with a business environment. It's been nice and safe, and let's not change things, and let's not rock the boat. And we've certainly seen some change in the last 10 years with free trade and so on. That was a wake-up call as to how we had to change. And I think we're sort of on the cusp of another period of time of a need for massive change. You can take any industry, take the insurance industry. It used to be a home insurance company providing home insurance. Had me as a captive customer. They could provide me the policy every year. I would pay it and go on my merry way. Well, now I can go on the internet. I can get an instant comparative quote from 30 different financial institutions at the drop of a hat. Suddenly I, the consumer, am more in charge of the transaction. That's going to have an impact on the insurance company. The competition is going to squeeze the margin that they make on the sale of that particular product. That should terrify them, and it doesn't seem to.
Okay, we've got to take one more break. When we come back, some final thoughts from Jim Carroll on the internet when One-on-One continues here on CBC News World. Back with final thoughts, One-on-One with Jim Carroll. There are some people who think this is all going just too quickly. Change is too rapid. Do you ever get anxious about how fast things are changing?
I do, but I think less so about how fast it's moving and more so about the level of hype. You know, yes, the internet is big, it's important, there's something huge happening here, but I'm sort of seeing a lot of people throw out their collective sanity as they try to deal with it. You know, for some companies, the secret to business on the net seems to be give stuff away at a loss, you know, and make it up in volume. There's a lot of business models with companies out there that make no economic sense whatsoever. The stock prices are overvalued, and I think a lot of people are starting to look at this as sort of a magic pot of gold at the end of the rainbow if they simply get involved, and that's not what this is at all. It's big, it's important, but it's not easy to deal with. It's not easy to figure out.
So when you see those numbers on the NASDAQ exchange, do you think it's overinflated?
Terrifies me. Absolutely terrifies me. And my biggest concern, and I was saying this a year ago, was you know, I think at some point in time we're going to have some type of realization set in that the internet stocks are tremendously overvalued. They'll crash in big fashion, and that has the potential to bring down the rest of the market. You know, because the market right now is very delicately psychologically balanced. I do worry about it. I think things have gone a little bit too far.
Why do you say that? Because everything else you're saying is that we're on the verge of moving into a whole new dimension with this, with the new technologies. Why would it crash?
Well, a lot of these companies are being financed by Wall Street. They're able to give stuff away at a price less than they paid for it simply because they're getting a lot of Wall Street money coming into them. Well, at some point in time, somebody's going to, you know, I'm an accountant. You look at the income statement. Did we sell this stuff for more than we paid for it? Have we made a profit? Yes or no? If you don't win. That's going to happen. They're not making a profit. And at one point in time, the investment money is going to dry up. Once that happens, the investment money dries up, these companies fail. You know, a large number of them are going to disappear. And that's going to cause a lot of people to look around and realize, hey, you know, I didn't get involved in the right thing.
But in a word, you're still excited about all the other areas of development.
Oh, there's something massive going on here, but it doesn't mean we need to throw out our collective sanity.
All right. Jim Carroll, thanks very much. It's been a pleasure talking to you.